Welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where we interview entertainment pros about their careers and how they became successful in the industry. The secrets to their success here every week. Here's your host, Sean Ventura.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm your host, Sean Ventura, and I just want to say go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. I just wanted to mention that this audio podcast was originally a Facebook Live. Today's guest is a great friend of mine. His name is James Introcaso, and he is a producer for TV. He also has a podcast. He was part of a podcast network. He's written a book, and now he's coming out with a board game. So James is going to tell us about all the things he does, and he's a great guy. It's going to be fun. Here we go. Hey everybody, we are live. This is Sean Ventura with the Lights Camera Pro podcast. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, soon to be LinkedIn, not Yinkton. I'm here with James Introcaso. Is it Introcaso or Introcaso?
Introcaso.
Introcaso here. James is an entrepreneur and a producer, and he's got a board game and books and podcast networks and so many things going on. It's going to be amazing. So I'm excited. How you doing, James?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Dude, you're so happy. I remember we used to work on this show, Run It Back, years ago with Matt Price, who hopefully is watching. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, Matt.
Late nights till late hours, 5 a.m, 4 a.m. And I remember just being tired and sitting there and working with you for hours and like a year and a half. And you're just happy now, man. It's good to see you all like happy and relaxed, because not that we were like miserable, but man, those were some long nights.
They really, really were. Yeah. And I remember there'd be a few times where you and I would be like losing it in the room. Like, they want to do what? They want to do what now?
Are they serious?
It's almost 3 a.m, right? And we're like, we got to change this or that, or waiting for graphics, that kind of thing. It was a lot of like, hurry up and wait, I remember, right? It'd be like, you get all this stuff at once and you'd be cranking. And then it was like, okay, well, now we're going to sit here for, like an hour and a half while we wait for the sound to come back or that kind of thing. So yeah, it was crazy.
Right. It was a crazy time, man. But that was one of my best times at Turner. So James.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about Bytes, man. So is it Bryte or Bytes? Let's just bring this up right. Burn Bryte.
Yeah, Burn Bryte. Yeah, Bryte. Yeah. So I think you stumbled upon this when we were working together too, Sean, that I would, while we were waiting in those long hours, sometimes I was often cruising the Dungeons and Dragons website, right? So I'm a big nerd. I have been for a long time. And when I was working in TV, I started to blog and write about role-playing games, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing. And so Burn Bryte is my role-playing game. It's a science fantasy game where like you can be bugs and robots and all the creatures you see pictured here. This crystal person, you can be them. And so that is the game where like you build a hero basically, and then you go on these different missions to try to save your universe, which is collapsing, right? It's like it's very psychedelic. The universe is like collapsing in on itself. And what's cool about it is, so I made this game with a bunch of awesome people, but it was made for a virtual gaming space, like a virtual tabletop. So you can play it around a real table, or right now, right, in the pandemic, you can play it too on this virtual space called Roll20, where you get together and you roll digital dice and that kind of thing. And so the game is built in to that virtual tabletop. You can sit down and start playing the game.
Very cool. And I'm going to show another picture here. So this is from the board game, obviously, not the virtual. Tell me what's going on here.
Yeah. So let's see right here. This picture that we're looking at here is, let's see. Am I looking at the right thing? Yes.
Has it not come up yet? You want me to tell you what's in it?
Yeah. Oh, I got it. Yeah, okay. There it is. Yes, exactly. Okay, just popped up for me. So yeah, so this actually is in the virtual space, right? So the virtual space allows you to like put down these tiles and stuff like that, and give art handouts to people that you're playing with. So everybody signs into the virtual table space at once, and like you get a link and you say, we're going to play the game here, and this is what you look at while you're playing, right? And you have video connection too, so that you're talking to people. So this is what it would look like while you're playing the game. This is like one of the adventures that's loaded in. So it's like there's a board loaded up. You can move your figure around the board, your hero's character around. And you like fight bad guys. And you stop bad things from happening. The cool thing about like a role-playing game, right? Like, and I know, Sean, you're like an actor and a director and a writer, and you've done all these cool things with your life, right? Mm-hmm. Role-playing game kind of combines that. Like, you step into the shoes of your character and you say, I want my character to do this. And it could be anything, right? You sit down, roast a marshmallow, punch somebody in the face, give it a stirring speech, right? And then the rules are broad, right? And they say like, this is how we adjudicate this. So you roll some dice to figure it out, but you sit down and you don't know what's going to happen. So it's about telling a story with your friends around the table, right? Like saying, how can we tell a really cool cinematic story? Each one of us is going to be a hero, and then one person is everybody else. So like, you're all the heroes. You're all the guardians of the galaxy, let's say, right? And then one person is like the director who says, okay, and then, this monster suddenly appears and that director controls the monster, or the person you're trying to save who keeps running off every time something scary happens, or that kind of thing. So that's how the whole thing works. And then together you kind of tell this story and you play to find out what the story is and what's going to happen.
Right. It's very cool, man. I obviously they were doing it in Stranger Things, and I played a little Dungeons & Dragons when I was a kid, but is this for adult audience, or is it for also kids or everybody?
Yeah, so this is for everybody can play. You can certainly dial up some more of like the violence and some of the other adult themes if you want to, right? But this, I would say kids, ages 12 and up are probably fine to play, and I would say, even 8 and up can play. They might need a little help with some of the math and the rules and things like that. But, it is, that's the whole point of the game, is like, you can get a bunch of people together and have a really good time. So there definitely are some of these sort of Dungeons and Dragons style games that are a little more mature, but this one isn't one of them. This is a hopefully broadly appealing to everybody. Right.
And you either told me or you had written in an article the press kit for this or something that it took you 3 years to make this. And where can people, after you talk about that for a second, where can people find it online?
Yeah. So it did take us 3 years to make it, right? Essentially, this game platform, Roll20, was putting out other people's games on their thing, right? They had Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and other games were coming to them, and they were putting those out. And they said, we want to make our own, kind of like how Netflix started putting out other people's content, right? And then they said, we want to make our own content now to go alongside this content. And so they approached me and said, will you help us make some stuff? Because I was already designing stuff with Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing. So I had already had contracts at different places. They said, you want to do your own thing? We want to do our own thing. Let's work together. And so, I helped them put together a team. And it's just been a lot of like play testing, and getting this into this virtual table space took a while. And, essentially a play test is like, you write the game and then you play it and then you realize everything that's wrong with it, and so you rewrite it, right? That's how playtesting works. So we did a bunch of that, and a bunch of consultants came in to talk about like, hey, maybe you could change this or make this better. So it was a long process, but it was a lot of fun to do. I'm really happy with the end result, and now now it's out there. If people want to check it out, it's at roll20.net or burnbryte.com. You can also find it there. So,
okay. Yeah. Very cool, man. So we kind of went backwards. We went to what you're doing right now.
That's right.
And so, which is cool. We can totally go out of order, but I've got a few things here from your promos from Discovery, and I also have a run it back clip. So,
yes.
I don't know what's going to happen with this run it back clip, but what is going to happen is it's going to go full screen with audio, and we'll just play like a minute to give people an idea, and we'll just talk about it a little bit. And then I have the UFO promo and the Wicked Tuna promo, and if you could just talk about those, and then we'll go to your book and your podcast stuff. So let's just play this. And
welcome back. Derrick Rose stole the highlights with those crazy jams, but these two teams reached the Eastern Conference Finals by stealing from their opponents. Mario Chalmers came off the bench for Miami and sparked an early run with some quick hands and a trio of steals. Easy buckets start at the defensive end, and the best way to get in the open floor is a quick swipe of the ball handler. We got the keys to becoming a shutdown defender like Mario and our technique of the week.
This week, it's the art of stealing the ball. The surest method of stopping your opponent is to take the pill away, whether by using fast hands in a one-on-one situation or your sixth sense to intercept a pass. A steal not only stops your opponent from scoring, but often leads to fast break points for your team.
okay, that's very cool, man. I wanted to find, I didn't have time, but I wanted to find the time that Mike Terrell turned the players into chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find that on my demo or your demo anywhere. But it was kind of a fun thing to do. We had trivia. I mean, just tell people about it a little bit. It showed on Cartoon Network at 8 a.m. It was an Adult Swim and a Turner Studios production, but like what happened there from your perspective? Just.
Yeah. So that was right. We, this show that I think everybody thought like, oh, this is going to be really easy to make. Right.
Yeah.
Because I think it started out with like you and Brad, right? Like two editors. Yeah. And the idea was we would take, one of the big NBA games of the week, usually the game that was on Thursday night. And it was usually, because this was in 2010 ish. So like it was usually whoever the Miami Heat were playing at that point.
Yeah.
And then we would take that game, we'd cut it down to an hour length, which is really, like 44 minutes, right? 42 to 44 minutes. We would put a bunch of special effects, like make the net catch on fire, make players look super speedy when they were like, on a breakaway down the court, do some slam dunks in slow-mo. And then we would also have these pop-up facts that would come up. And then there would also be these interstitials that were shot with Kyle, who you saw in the clip there. He was the host of the show, right? Those would be written and shot. And so usually Thursday night was the game. We'd come in Friday morning and we'd basically work until Sunday at 8 a.m. when the show would air, right? You'd go home and like sleep for a few hours and then come right back basically. Yeah. So that was it. And the way we worked was we would get a quarter of the game and we had to, write a bunch of pop-ups and put those in the game and cut it down to the length that it needed to be and add in all the special effects, working with the graphics team to make that happen, and put in interstitials. They also had interviews that they had like shot with players at the very beginning of the season during a press day. So, they had all these things that they had made outside that we would drop in and stuff like that. So, it was this process of like, first you would go through your quarter and kind of like mark everything and say, we're going to do this special effect here and we're going to do this and we're going to, now let's send that all out. Okay, now let's drop in all of those pop-up facts, right? And request the art that's going to come. Every pop-up fact had like a little piece of clip art on it that would be, like LeBron James in a wig or a fancy outfit or something like that, or Ron Artest laying bricks like as a bricklayer.
Right. But who was the effects guy? His name was Chris something.
Oh yeah,
he did some crazy effects, man, very quickly. Like, few hour turnaround to have like a fake hawk land on somebody's shoulder, or take a hawk footage and make it land on someone's shoulder. I don't know what he did, but the chicken nuggets was probably the craziest thing that he did, turning players into little chicken nugget bodies. That was a great idea.
Yeah, and that Mike Terrell was just an amazing, right? Like amazing creative producer, had all these ideas that he would say, like, "Can we do this?" And Chris would just be like, "Yep, we can." Like I'm gonna try or whatever. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was a fun time, a fun group. All right, so we're gonna go to Discovery. You went to Discovery Channels, and you were doing promos. You were a producer there.
Yeah, so I went to Nat Geo.
Nat Geo, okay.
Yeah. So at Nat Geo, I did creative producer there. So there was a guy who used to work at Cartoon named Vincent Arrico.
Yep.
And I didn't know Vincent when I was there, right? Like we never crossed paths. He had already left Cartoon by the time I showed up.
I remember that,
Yeah, he knew some of the other people, and he was the one who worked at National Geographic. And so I had some people over there put in a good word. I applied for the job, and I started as an associate producer there, and I was there for about 4 years, and I was a senior producer by the time I left. And I still work with them now. I went freelance, but I still work with them all the time now, doing promos and stuff. Yeah. I love working with them, and I love working at National Geographic, and I really enjoy doing promo work for a bunch of different reasons. But I think the biggest thing is like promos are short, so they're faster to make than like a TV show, right? Although we put Run It Back together faster than most promos going together. But you know what I mean? Like you're never bored because you'll work on a TV show and you might be there for 6-7 years if it goes on long enough. And it's if you don't like the content, that can be hard. Yeah. And you don't always, only the people at the top of that show get to choose really what the content is. Whereas like with promo, a lot of the time you're leading the project and you get to say, okay, how am I gonna take this show? Like in Nat Geo, right? It's always about like a veterinarian or an animal, right? Or like some sort of science-y thing, right? How am I gonna take this and how am I going to promote this in a way that hasn't been done before? How am I going to have fun with this? How am I going to make this look really, really cool and sound awesome? And it's like making a bunch of little films. And I love that. I love that. Like I get to work on, I get to push out all these awesome ideas, and it's usually a little more regular than filmmaking, right? Like it's usually a little more 9 to 5. Certainly there's late nights and weekend shoots and stuff like that, but it's not like when you're making a film or a TV show where you're just round the clock. So,
right. And can you put some insight on like the Discovery networks there up in Maryland? So what they have like 12 networks. Is it similar to Turner? It's a campus with a bunch of buildings and there's different networks, or is it different somehow?
Yeah. So the big networks up in there's a bunch that are up in that area, right? And the first one is Discovery, and they actually just left, or a lot of their people, I should say, have left. Okay. In the last year, they moved a lot of their people to New York and to LA. They still do. Okay. Yeah. They still have some people there. I think the Science Channel is there still. And so they have a big campus there, though, or they did, I should say. They had this big campus that was very similar to Turner. Not as big as Turner, right? Like, but yeah, you had Discovery Channel, ID, the Science Channel. Travel Channel eventually became part of Discovery networks. So and
was Nat Geo part of that, or were they not part of that?
No, so Nat Geo's separate, right? So so this is really interesting. So Discovery Networks owns all those. Right. Nat Geo, when I was working there, was owned by News Corp. And now Nat Geo is owned by Disney because of that. What I was going to say. Okay, Disney. Okay. Yeah. So like Nat Geo's on Disney Plus, right? You can watch shows about veterinarians and all kinds of stuff.
I saw that. Okay, so let's show. Let's just do one. We'll show the UFO promo right now, and then you can talk about. It's kind of cool, like the obviously steady cams, I'm guessing, but you can talk about it afterwards. It's very cool.
moving out over the desert. You have eyes on this thing?
I do, but I've got to get up higher to get a better look.
I see it. It looks like a plane or military aircraft.
No way. Gotta be extraterrestrial.
Play nice, boys. Whatever it is, it's moving fast.
$10 says it's not extraterrestrial.
Seeing is believing. I'll meet you in the desert.
Guys, it's moving. It's moving. What is that?
New episodes Fridays at 10 on the National Geographic Channel.
Okay, that's kind of fun. I mean, I love the way it was shot. Like they're just chasing them around with Steadicams, I guess.
Yeah. So there was a lot of Steadicam work on this one, and this is actually one of the first promos that I worked on at National Geographic that I got to like script and have a big shoot for and stuff. The first time they were like, "Hey, here's a budget, go make something," right?
Nice.
So yeah, and I worked on this with Vincent Arico, a ton of support, and a company called Big Machine Design actually shot it and did all the editing. We worked with them to do it, and so the concept was chasing UFOs, right? It always starts with like, what is the show? Chasing UFOs is a show like Finding Bigfoot, where like people, it's actually made by the same production company that makes Finding Bigfoot. These three people go out into deserts and UFO hotspots and try to find in the sky like what's going on, and then evidence of UFOs and are there aliens in Area 51, that kind of thing, right? And traditionally, like all those shows go, like they don't find anything, but they don't find nothing either. You know what I mean? Like they find enough to be like, maybe this is something. And so we were thinking about like, how do we make this exciting and show people that like this is going to be it was coming out in the summertime ride, right? And so we came up with this idea of like, what if we, in the show they run around a lot with cameras on their back and they're really going at it, and we're like, what if we really really play that up and make this kind of like an action movie, And so we did, and it was great. Like, there are stunt doubles in that, like when the guy gets hit by a car, that's not actually the same dude, right? That's a stunt double. When she jumps up on and is running along the side of the building, that's a stunt double, and that kind of thing. So we had a lot of fun doing that, and yeah, it's all shot on Steadicam. And a lot of late nights out in the California desert to shoot that one, basically.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I like that one. So you want to do a Wicked Tuna? Was that your shoot?
Yes. So some
it's like
of it was
something versus something. So
yeah, North versus South.
So let's play that one, and you can talk about it.
Up north, these wicked captains hunt blue gold, tuna, worth up to 20 grand apiece. But they followed the fish into southern waters, and the locals ain't exactly the sharing type. When every captain's got mouths to feed, the only lines they won't cross are the ones they put in the water. Wicked Tuna, North versus South. The new series starts Sunday, August 17th at 10 on National Geographic.
Very cool, man. I like the graphics. Obviously, you have to go on a ship and shoot with them, or they just use footage from the show?
So it's a combo of both, right? We shot some stuff, and some of it is stuff from the show. And some of it is actually from an earlier shoot that they did. So Wicked Tuna, super popular series on National Geographic about guys who fish bluefin tuna, and they can only like fish them one at a time, right? And so it's all about the battle with the fish and that kind of thing. But so we had footage from when they had shot with the original Wicked Tuna guys, the North, right? They're from Gloucester, hence Wicked. And then they go down to the Outer Banks, right? That's the South version of it. And no one had shot with the guys from the South yet. So I went down just with the guys from the South. And we shot that with a company called Shiloh, who also did those awesome graphics that you saw. And we kind of like, the idea was like to take some of the cool dramatic moments and highlight them almost like a comic book panel, right? With that like watercolor sort of graphic that you're seeing there. And so we shot some of those cool moments, a lot of those close-ups and people looking mean and all the slow-mo stuff, right? And then we intercut it with the best of the show footage, and basically wrote this sort of anthemic script to put under it with a narrator talking about, you know, what it's like, this sort of battle between the people from the North and the people from the South, and how it's going to go. The show actually has been rebranded. It's called Wicked Tuna Outer Banks now. That sort of version of the show, but that's the first season of it, was Wicked Tuna North versus South. Yeah. So, and it was great, and it was fun to shoot with those guys because they're like not used to, you know, essentially they show up and do whatever is told of them. They do whatever is asked of them to do, right? So this was like, hey, like, you're not actually gonna catch a fish, right? Like we're just gonna like throw that harpoon in the water as hard as you can and just look awesome doing it. And they're like, well, yeah, but if I was gonna throw it at a fish, you know, I would do it this way. And I was like, no, but we just need, you know, like we need it to look like you're Ahab killing Moby Dick, right? That's what we need. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Let's talk about your book. So this is The Explorer's Guide to Wild Mount. And did you write a bunch of books, or was this the only one?
Yeah, so this is one. This is kind of the latest in a series. So this is an official Dungeons and Dragons book, right? Okay. And I've written, I should say I've been part of a team, right? Because these books are like 300,000 words and they take a village to write. Wow. But this one is probably the most popular one that I've worked on. And I wrote a significant chunk of this with a team led by a guy named Matt Mercer. Matt is a voice actor in LA, and he has so people live stream themselves playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? And he hosts.
Where do they play that, on Twitch?
On Twitch, yeah, okay. Exactly, and YouTube. And his show is called Critical Role, and it's like the Game of Thrones of Dungeons and Dragons, and that it's super duper popular. They get hundreds of thousands of viewers every week across YouTube, Twitch, and they put out a podcast stream too. They're doing what you're doing, Sean.
Right.
Yeah. So
but just a lot more viewers.
I know, and it's him, and it's all voice actors who are playing, and so they're really great at like playing up the characters and being different people, and it's very dramatic. And so he asked me if I wanted to be on the writing team for this book, and it was awesome because it's his world. And so I would say like, hey Matt, can I change this? And he'd be like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Or he'd say like, what if we did it this way instead? Like, so it was this really collaborative writing process where we would write, and every week we had like a meeting that would go on for a couple hours and talk about what we were working on, and just like super duper collaborative. And what was cool about it was the day this book was announced, it was the #1 best-selling book on Amazon. So not even like in a category, like in all books, it was #1, and it hadn't even come out yet. So that was pretty cool to have my name on that when that happened. And I'm very proud of the work. The whole team did a lot of work, and Matt himself, did the most work by far. But yeah, I wrote about 50,000 words for this book.
That's fantastic, man. And it's very cool. I mean, I know some people are like Dungeons and Dragons is for high school kids, but adults do it too. And it sounds exactly like I interviewed a guy, John Viner, who was a writer and voice actor for Family Guy and the Cleveland Show and American Dad. And he, they sit 12 people in a room and have to write it. But what you're talking about with this writing and this collaboration is very similar to this guy, Adam Lapidus, who worked on Sweet Life on Deck, and I want to say that 70s show. No, that was another guy. But it's this similar thing, whether it's live action or animation or books, where a bunch of people get together and write it because it's just too much for one person to write. So everybody's writing like, pieces, small pieces of this massive thing. Okay, so your story with podcasting, how do you start? How do you expand? And now you're actually ending your podcast, correct?
I am. Yeah. So just the writing work has increased right now, and I really love doing the writing. So something had to give, right? But I'm sad about leaving podcasting behind. And what happened was I had this idea to do a gaming podcast that was like about news in gaming, right? Interviews with people who do game stuff, kind of like this show, but with gaming focused.
Okay.
But also like getting people to comment about the news and stuff like that. And essentially, this was 7 years ago. I reached out to a guy who had a podcast named Jeff Greiner. And he had this podcast called The Tome Show. And I said, hey, I'd like some advice. I'm thinking about doing this. And he said, do you want to come do your podcast on my feed? Right. And he had been doing his show for about 10 years at that point. So I thought, great built-in audience. Right. So and that was very nice of him. He had no idea who I was, right? For him to just offer that was very, very kind. And so for 3 years, I was on his thing. And that's when I started, and I was like, I've always wanted to write games and stuff. And now I have this built-in audience. Maybe I should start doing that. So that's how the writing started too, right?
Okay.
And then, so after 3 years with him, I thought like, okay, it's time to break off and do my own thing. And so my friend Rudy, who was also doing stuff on the network, or on Jeff's network, we said, Jeff, we're going to start our own network. Had like a very amicable parting of ways. And then for 4 years, we ran our own podcast network called Don't Split the Podcast Network, which is a reference to an unofficial board game rule. And we have a bunch of different shows on there. All of them are still continuing. It's just the network that is ending. And my podcast is actually going to keep going, but it's going to have a new host. What's
the name of it?
So my podcast is called Tabletop Babble, because it's the same thing, right? We're still talking about games with people who make games and people who love games and stuff like that. So it's all about tabletop games. And that's going to move over to a network called Geekspective. And new hosts are going to take over, a woman named Amber and her friend Kenny and another guy who goes by Crossways GM. They are going to take over the show, and I'm very excited to become a listener of it. I think they're going to do an awesome job.
My last question is how do you, I want you to give advice to young people who want to do what you do. How do you do it all? How do you find time? Do you not sleep much? What is your secret?
Yeah. So, when I was first getting started, there was a lot of like not sleeping and working on nights and weekends and that kind of thing, because I was still full time at National Geographic when I started doing podcasting and stuff like that. And so, I think one of the things is to, as you're doing these things, plan, right? Like a lot of people say like, just jump in, just do it, and I agree, right? Like get in there and do the things you want to do, because you shouldn't wait for permission, right? You shouldn't wait for somebody to say, here is money to do this thing you want to do. You should make the thing you want to make. And then if you can monetize it, great. But at least you got to do it your way, right? And that's a luxury not everybody has. That's a privilege not everybody has. But so part of it was that. And then part of it was also cutting out some things in life that were not necessarily for me constructive, right? And so like I played a lot of video games. Like essentially what was happening was when I started this, my wife had a job where she traveled a lot, right? And I was like, okay, well, I'll play a lot of video games, right? And I was like spending hours and hours playing video games. And then when I started to do this, I was like, wow, I'm not really playing video games. But then I was like, yeah, but look, you just made 10 podcasts, right? And you can make 10 more, and you're going to have something that lasts, that will be, on the airwaves forever, and people will get to listen to them. And, when we're dead and gone, aliens will find them and be like, what is this about? And so, like, so
That's
so
why
part
we
of it
podcast,
is, yeah, right, exactly. It's for the aliens.
For the aliens, right?
But you know, so part of it was finding the time, because I was like, okay, this is going to be a thing that I really want to do. And I do, like, you know, I still get a lot of time now to watch, you know, Stranger Things and play games and stuff like that. But at first it was like, okay, I need to put the effort into making this a reality, and I'm going to need to do research, and I'm going to need to give myself time to screw up. Right. Like that's big, is like, wow, I totally deleted that whole thing that I just did, and I didn't mean to do that. Now I got to figure out a way to save it, or my computer blew up and I need to figure out how I'm going to save the hard drive, right? Like, just like anything else, give yourself time to figure it out, and give yourself like a schedule that works for you. And for me, and this is probably true for you too, Sean, I don't know if you found this, like I know that content that you put out into the world gets an audience if you can put it out on a regular basis, right?
Right.
And so giving yourself deadlines, not because like, hey, I'm going to do this when it's perfect and done, because nothing ever is, right?
Nothing. Yeah. You could just work on it forever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have one great episode of one podcast that nobody listens to.
Exactly.
You know, so that's like, I would say put out, you know, give yourself a schedule so that you can say, and make it manageable, right? If you think you can only put out one podcast every other week, or you can only put out one game every 3 years, or whatever it is, do that, right? But then stick to it, and then you can always ramp it up, right? Or if you need to, dial it back. Like, you got to take care of you. But the biggest thing is like, plan out your stuff, give yourself a schedule, and then be okay, right? Like, it is really hard to not compare yourself to other people who are doing what you're doing, right? And there are going to be people who you look at who you're like, wow, I've been doing this for 4 years. This other person just came on the scene a month ago, and they already have more listeners than me, and they, you know, whatever it is, right? But there's somebody looking at you saying, I've been doing this for 10 years, and this person just came on the scene, you know? So like, just know that like, you should only compete with yourself. Be part of your community, right? If there's a community out there doing this, engage with them, put into it what you want to get out of it, because they're gonna help you out. Right. And managing your time starts with like, hey, I really want to sit down and make a plan about how to do this. So I take less promo work now because I get more gaming work, and I really like the gaming work. I also really love the promo work. So like, I'm balancing both, and I'm finding a place where I really like to be, right? So that I can do it all, and also now get like a good, 8 hours of sleep every night, and see my friends and that kind of thing. Right. So that's important.
But that's great advice. I love everything you said.
Yeah.
Where can we find Bryte?
So Bryte, you can find at burnbryte.com. That's BRYTE.com. And I'm also always tweeting about it at my name on Twitter, James Introcaso, INTROCASO. So I'm giving away free copies and stuff like that. So people should check it out.
Very cool, man. All right, I'm going to check out your podcast. I'd love to listen to I have a fly in here, but I love to I love to listen to podcasts of people I interview, and it's great to talk to you, man. I haven't talked to you in 6-7 years. It's great to see you, and this has been awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude. I'm really, really psyched to be here.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for doing this, and keep in touch, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks, James. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where entertainment pros talk about how they made their dream into a career.
Go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks to Bob Juergens for the Rockin' VO and Joseph McDade for the music. Next week, we have a great guest. It's author Russell Nohelty. He's written comic books like Katrina Hates the Dead, Ichabod Jones, Monster Hunter, and Pixel Dust. He also has more than a dozen novels that he's written. He's a great guy. It's a lot of fun. Tune in next week.